Firms that have some control over the price of their product are able to do what economists call price discriminate. Price discrimination is charging a different price for different units of the same product. For example, an airline might sell 2 tickets to 2 different people who are sitting on the same flight going to the same destination in the same class of seats. A college might charge 2 different prices to 2 students who are taking the same classes and living in the same dorm. A movie theater might charge different prices to a 30-year-old and to a 70-year-old who are sitting in the same movie theater at the same time watching the same movie. Price discrimination is a pricing technique firms use to gain more revenue. For example, consider the market for airline flights from New York to Los Angeles. Suppose the equilibrium price of the flight is $400 and the equilibrium quantity is 10,000 units. So at a price of $400, consumers are willing to buy 10,000 seats a week, and at a price of $400, the airline is willing to provide 10,000 seats per week. The airline's weekly revenue is $400 a ticket times the 10,000 tickets it sells, or $4 million. Now, consider the customers for a moment. While the customers paid $400 a seat, there were some customers who were willing to pay more, and we know this from looking at the demand curve. For example, if the airline had charged $500 a ticket, the demand curve tells us that there would have been 4,000 customers that would have been willing to buy seats. If the airline had sold the seats at $500 each, 4,000 customers would have bought seats, and the airline would have made a revenue of $2 million. Of course, this means that there's an additional 6,000 people who did not buy tickets that otherwise would have if the price had been $400. Suppose the airline charges $400 for those additional 6,000 customers. The customers are willing to pay $400. The airline sells 6,000 tickets at $400 a piece, so that second set of customers will generate an additional $2.4 million in revenue for the airline. So in total, the airline will have made $4.4 million in revenue. $2 million from the first set of people whom it charged $500 a ticket, and $2.4 million from the second set of people whom it charged $400 a ticket. The airline ends up making an additional $400,000 in revenue on the same 10,000 tickets simply by dividing its customers into 2 groups and charging different prices to those 2 groups. Now let's push the example. Suppose the airline could separate the customers into 3 groups. Those who are willing to pay $500 a ticket, those who are willing to pay $450 a ticket, and those who are only willing to pay $400 a ticket. According to the demand curve, there are 4,000 customers who are willing to pay $500 a ticket. So those 4,000 customers will generate $2 million in revenue for the airline. There's another 2,000 customers who are willing to pay $450 a ticket. Those customers will generate an additional $900,000 in revenue for the airline. Finally, there's 4,000 customers who are willing to pay only $400. Those customers will generate an additional $1.6 million in revenue for the airline. So in total, by dividing the customers into 3 groups and charging different prices to each group, the firm generates $4.5 million in revenue on the same 10,000 tickets. Now suppose the airline could charge every single customer a different price, the maximum price that customer is willing to pay. If the airline could do this, we would say that the airline is perfectly price discriminating. It's charging each customer the maximum the customer is willing to pay. And in this case, the airline would generate $5.5 million in revenue on the same 10,000 tickets. So the conclusion is, firms that have at least some control over the price of their product can price discriminate in an attempt to generate more revenue than they would get otherwise. But to price discriminate, the firm has to be able to divide its customers into different groups and to be able to identify how much each group is willing to pay.